Build yourself, brick by brick.
Well, what's going on, everybody? Looks like you're here for part 2 of the deadlift class. That's awesome. I'm glad to have returning visitors. If you haven't watched part 1, don't worry. The link should be somewhere in the description. And honestly, I wouldn't worry about it too much. I'm trying to make these videos so that they're independent of each other. So you can watch this one first, then watch the other one, then watch this one. Or, yeah, do whatever you want. So hopefully, well, I guess since we're talking about the last video, that has more to do with which grips to use, over, under, over, over. And not even which grips to use. I'm more of a, here's all the tools and information. You go ahead and do what you want with them. Decide for yourself. So hopefully by now, if you've watched the first one, you have an ideal grip you'd like to use. And in today's video, we're going to find out where to use it, where to grip the bar. I'm going to keep it somewhat generic with wide grip and narrow grip. And usually the truth is somewhere in the middle. Let you guys decide that. I have more experience with narrow grip, so that's where we're going to start. Like I said, I'm going to keep it pretty generic. I'm going to give you some pros and cons to each, and I'll let you guys make the final call. So the first pro we'll have for narrow grip is you're gripping the bar narrower, so you're taking advantage of your arm length. So we'll call it shorter range of motion. You might be thinking, shorter range of motion, that doesn't sound like a pro. It is if you want to lift as heavy as possible. Lifting as heavy as possible, you want to take advantage of how short you can make the range of motion while it's still being legal in a professional setting. And all you're doing with a narrow grip is taking advantage of your long arms, shortening the range of motion. Hopefully that makes sense. I'll plan to draw some figures at the end of this if the whole shorter, longer range of motion doesn't make sense. Possible con for the narrow grip is bar balance. Bar balance. So think of the bar as a long, skinny metal object, which it is, with, I'm assuming, heavy weight on both sides. Picking up the bar from the middle, you're setting the fulcrum to the middle, it's going to want to do this. It might want to do this. That is a recipe for disaster. If the bar ever does this, do not try to correct it. You just open a world of injuries. You see all those bicep tears? You're asking for it. You can get a bicep tear, you can get a hip injury, and long term you can get kind of muscular imbalances. When it starts doing this, just drop it. Just drop it. Obviously, you're going to want to be in control of it. So if the bar's doing this, there's something wrong with your setup. It's not just because it's narrow grip, but I'm just saying this is a possibility of what can happen. Another pro, which kind of piggybacks off of bar balance, is bar bend. Using the same idea, picking it up from the middle, it's easier for the bar to bend, to whip a little bit. And that's going to come back and shorten your range of motion. So if you're generating, let's say, X number of force to bring the bar all the way up, you might only have to generate 75% of it for the first half of the lift because the bar will bend, has a bigger tendency to bend with the narrow grip. And don't get too excited about the bar bend. It tends to only work, and hopefully this makes sense, it only tends to work with heavier weights. So don't rely on bar bend. Another con is an awkward lockout. Let me see if I can try to position myself. If you're narrow grip, your upper chest is going to look like this, especially if you got big pecs like old Reb. it's going to be awkward to lock out because your shoulders, your biceps are going to be conflicting with your pecs. Same with your arms and your wrists. They're going to be conflicting with your pelvic area because obviously your arms and your pelvic area, your biceps and your pecs can't exist in the same space at once. So if you've got a really narrow grip and you're trying to stand up with it, it might be easier because of these guys, but it's going to be harder because the lockout is just going to get really awkward. So keep that in mind. Another pro, and quite possibly the best of them all, is a narrow grip makes sumo deadlifting possible. You've seen me do sumo deadlift. I'm sure you've seen it on other channels. But if you choose to do sumo, it cancels out the weird lockout con because your legs and your hips are open, which allows you to stand up with the bar a little bit more controlled, a little bit more freely. So sumo and narrow grip, they go hand in hand. They knock out the lockout con, and it's a 10 out of 10. So some insight on narrow grip. I guess we'll keep the show moving and go to wider grip. Not a lot to say about wide grip because when the grip starts to get too wide, it's no longer a deadlift. It's more of a snatch grip, snatch deadlift, which could be considered its own exercise, Olympic lifting, all that stuff. But if you kind of go to the limits of what a wide grip deadlift would look like, one of the biggest pros is your upper back. Think about a narrow grip. What's your back going to want to do? It's going to want to round. When you widen the grip, your upper back will not bend because it is engaged. It's mechanically not going to bend with your upper back is mechanically not going to bend with a wider grip. So if you're a new deadlifter and you've noticed that if I round my back, I can lift more weight, which you can, checking out the wide grip might help because it'll force you not to widen, or it'll force you not to round your back. So something to check out for the new deadlifters out there. A con is a longer range of motion. Longer range of motion. Kind of the opposite of the narrow grip, where it was a shorter range of motion. As you widen your grip, you are artificially shortening your arms. Obviously, you can't physically shorten your arms, but in terms of range of motion, you are shortening your arms. And for this to make more sense, I'm going to draw some triangles. So we're going to picture our head as the top of the triangle, our arms as the two legs on the sides of the triangle, and the barbell will be the base of the triangle. This is what a normal deadlift would look like, and this has some height. This is where my hands touch the barbell. This is my head. These are my arms. That's the barbell. This is a normal grip, not wide, not narrow. When I widen my grip, I get something like this. I get some different height. Obviously, the length of my arms can't change, right? I can't shorten them physically, but the distance from my head to the barbell has changed. And in order to compensate for that, I gotta sink my hips, my legs, my ass, I gotta sink everything lower to reach the barbell. Thus, since I'm reaching lower, I am lengthening my range of motion. So, hopefully that makes sense. And, just for fun, I'm gonna put a pro and a con for longer range of motion because that longer range of motion is building the hell out of your upper back. The reason why you can't round your upper back is because it is fully engaged in a wide grip deadlift. So if you're planning to build muscle, widen that grip. If you're planning to lift heavy ass weight, maybe consider a little shorter grip. But like I said, these are just the facts. These are the tools. Use them as you may. Last time we talked about how to grip. Today we're talking about where to grip. So hopefully you guys take this information and get to the gym and tear that shit up. All right, man. See ya.